Hello friends. So in order for us to round up our series on Vesper theory and molecular geometries, we're going to briefly look at the octahedral molecular geometry and its derivatives. When we talk about the derivatives of the octahedral molecular geometry, we are talking about the square pyramidal and the square planar molecular geometries. Okay? So in the octahedral molecular geometry, we're talking about molecules that has 6 things around the central atom. Whenever we are talking about things around the central atom, we are talking about what we call electron groups or electron domains around the central atom. In the last lecture, we dealt about the molecular geometry involving a central atom with 5 electron groups or electron domains around it. Then we talked about the trigonal bipyramidal molecular geometry. But for this lecture, we are talking about the molecular geometry where we have a centrally placed atom with 6 things around the central atom, or 6 electron domains around the central atom. Recall that these electron domains can be lone pairs of electrons or bonded pairs of electrons, as the case may be. Recall that when you have atoms surrounding a central atom without lone pair of electron, you're going to have the parent electron or molecular geometry. But because lone pairs of electrons are game changers, once you begin to introduce one lone pair of electron or a second lone pair of electron, you're ultimately going to have a different molecular geometry away from the parent electron geometry. So the first in the octahedral molecular geometry is the octahedral electron geometry. Here we are talking about molecules that show the Vesper format of AX6 E0. Of course, I told you in the previous lectures that when you have the E0, it means that there is no lone pair of electron present on the central atom. So here ultimately we have 6 X atoms surrounding the centrally placed A atom with 0 lone pair of electron. Of course, the variable here E is denoting what we call lone pairs of electron. And I recall I told you that lone pairs of electrons are game changers. Once you begin to introduce them into the mix, you begin to alter the molecular geometry of molecules that you make or you produce after that Vesper format. Okay? So 6 atoms covalently bonded to the central atom with no lone pairs of electron will ultimately have this generic formula, and that is what we express in the octahedral molecular geometry. Nice. And of course, the format AX6E0 has a Vesper generic structure that you see here, where you see your A centrally placed with 6 X atoms around it. The interesting thing here is that all the bonds around this are equal. All right? So you don't have any side that you will call the axial position or the equatorial position in this case, because the repulsive interaction is even in all the sides. Any of the sides can be taken to accommodate 1 lone pair of electron or 2 lone pairs of electron. Unlike in the last series, in the trigonal bipyramidal, we make mention of the fact that we preferentially would want to place our lone pairs of electrons in the equatorial position. But in this particular octahedral molecular geometry, the equatorial position or the axial positions are not well defined. So the lone pairs of electron, once we begin to build or form the derivatives of this parent electron geometry, once we begin to introduce lone pairs of electron, those lone pairs of electrons can be introduced in any of these locations or any of those bonds. However, the rule of thumb is that whichever position we choose to introduce a lone pair of electron, we want to place the second lone pair of electron as far as possible and perhaps oppositely placed. Okay, all right? The lone pairs of electron will be placed oppositely, but the lone pairs of electron will begin to come into play once we begin to make a derivative of this parent octahedral molecular geometry. So for the parent octahedral geometry, we're going to have 6 atoms covalently bonded to the central atom with our lone pairs of electrons. So when we get to the derivatives, if we decide to place a lone pair of electron here, that means in placing the second one, it will be opposite it, because those lone pairs of electrons want to be as far apart as possible. So we're going to have the 180 degree kind of distance between the both of them. Okay, so when we start talking about the derivatives, if we choose this position to carry the lone pair of electron, that means the second lone pair we introduce, it should be here. So if we chose this position for a lone pair of electron, that means when we're placing the second one, it's going to be here, and all of these will give birth to the derivatives of this parent molecular or electron geometry, as the case may be. So we're coming to those when we begin to introduce the lone pairs of electron. But for now, the perfect example of the parent of a molecule that has the exact molecular geometry called octahedral is what we call sulfur hexafluoride. Sulfur hexafluoride. All right. So for us to begin to even explain what inspired the name, I think we have to look at the sides. Okay. If you look closely, you will see that you have a square. You have a square here. When you join these 4 together, you have a square. And when you join this F to this, you also join this to this. When you join this to this, and also join this to this, you discover that you have what we call a pyramid, 4-phase pyramid on top. Okay. Again, if you join this fluorine atom to this, join this fluorine atom to this, and join this fluorine atom to this, and also join this fluorine atom to this, you have 4-phased pyramid. Okay, as it is. Okay, you have 4-phase structures below and 4-phase pyramid above. At the end of the day, ultimately you have 8 sides. That's why we call it octahedral. You have 8 sides. Okay, if you check it, you see you have 1, 2, all right, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sides, and that is why it's called octahedral geometry, because this molecular geometry shows us 8 sides. All right, beautiful. So the next thing you're going to know here is that, of course, this makes a 90 degrees. All right, it makes a 90-degree angle. As a matter of fact, all of these angles, of course, recall we are looking at structures in 3 dimensions. All of these bond angles are equal to 90 degrees, whichever side you choose to look at it from. Okay, all the angles will ultimately form 90-degree bond angles. Okay, in the octahedral geometry. Beautiful. So, perfect example, sulfur hexafluoride. Now, when we begin to introduce a lone pair of electron into the parent electron geometry by perhaps removing one of the bonded atom to it, we're going to introduce the first derivative known as the square pyramidal. All right, and the square pyramidal has the Vesper form of AX5E1. Most times we don't want to put the 1 because anything times 1 is 1. It's itself. Okay, so here we have AX5E as the Vesper form or the Vesper formula or format, as the case may be. And of course, the generic structure is given by this is exactly what you have in the parent electron octahedral geometry. However, we discovered this particular atom was replaced, and of course, we replaced it with a lone pair of electrons. Remember, I told you lone pairs of electrons are game changers. They ultimately will want to alter the molecular geometry, even though the electron geometry is the same. What we mean by the electron geometry is that we have 6 electron domains around the central atom, as well as in this place we have 6 electron domains around the central atom. Recall that a lone pair of electrons is also an electron group or electron domain. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 things around the central atom. However, we have a lone pair replacing a bonded pair. So we're going to have a greater repulsive interaction, because the repulsive interaction, recall the repulsive interaction between the lone pair of electron and the bond pair is greater than bond pair. So this lone pair of electrons is going to be pushing against all of these bonds around the central atom. Recall we are looking at this in 3D. So from every angle there will be this repulsive interaction between this lone pair of electrons and all of these bonds, and that of course is going to give us bond angles that are less than 90 degrees as we had in this case, because we have greater repulsive interaction between the lone pair of electrons and all of these bonds. Recall again that the solid wedge, as you see here and here, is showing us the bonds or electron groups that are coming towards me, the viewer, or you, the viewer as well. While the broken hedge or hashed wedge bond, the broken wedge bonds or the hashed wedge bond are showing the electron group or electron domain or bonds receding away from us, the viewers, of course, into the plane, which is the ball. Perfect example of this, of a molecule that is the square pyramidal molecular geometry, is iodine pentafluoride. Okay, iodine pentafluoride. Again, if you look at it closely, you're going to notice we have a perfect square again here. All right, if you join all of this together, we're having a perfect square. But if you join, of course, this fluorine to this fluorine, and join this fluorine to this fluorine, joining this fluorine to this, and joining this to this, you are going to make a pyramid, a four-sided pyramid on top of the square. That's why it's called square pyramidal, because we have a perfect square in the center, and then we have the four-sided pyramids that is made. So that is why what inspired the name square pyramidal molecular geometry. So even though both of them have the octahedral electron geometry, they have 6 electron domains around the central atom. But in terms of molecular geometry, you call this octahedral molecular geometry, or you call this square pyramidal molecular geometry. So a square pyramidal molecular geometry is the first derivative of the octahedral molecular geometry. Nice. And the bond angles, I said, that will be formed here because of the greater repulsive interaction between this lone pair of electron and all of these electrons. Recall here all the bonds are 90 degrees, but because there is a greater repulsive interaction between the lone pairs of electron and all of these bonded pairs, they will want to recede away a bit from the lone pairs of electron, and that will going to form angles that are less than 90 degrees, depending on the molecule that we are talking about. However, all of those angles will be less than 90 degrees. Beautiful. So the next and the second derivative of the octahedral molecular geometry is called the square planar. Of course, here we have a VSEPR notation of AX4E2. Of course, here what that means is that we have started introducing 2 lone pairs of electrons into the molecule. Here we started by replacing one of the atoms with a lone pair of electrons, giving us square pyramidal. Then here we have ended up replacing 2 of the atoms, okay, or 2 bonded pairs with lone pairs of electrons. Beautiful. And if you watch closely, I told you we could have placed the lone pair here. That means the second lone pair will be here. If we choose to place it here, it will be here, because the lone pairs of electrons must be placed far apart. Of course, they're going to make that 180 degree distance from both of them. And here I said that the equatorial and the axial position is not well defined in the octahedral molecular geometry. So whichever place you decide to place the lone pairs of electrons, they must be placed opposite each other. All right, this is key. You understand that? And the one powerful example that we're going to use to explain or describe this molecular geometry is xenon tetrafluoride, xenon tetrafluoride. If you look at it, we're going to make a perfect square when we are joining all of those atoms together. So we have a perfect square. Are you looking at it? We have what? A perfect square with two lone pairs of electrons there. That is why we call it the square planar. You have a perfect square which is on the same plane as it is, okay? So that's why it's called square planar molecular geometry. The interesting thing here is that all the bond angles are going to be 90 degrees. The beautiful thing is that introducing the first lone pair of electrons, all those bonds we want to, move downwards away from the lone pair of electrons. But when you place the second lone pair of electrons from down again, it also pushes them, so they become, they become equal. The pulsing interaction becomes even, both downwards and upwards. So at the end of the day, you're going to have all the bond angles will all be what? 90 degrees at the end of the day. All right. The lone pair of electron above pushes the bond downwards. The one below pushes it up, so upwards. At the end of the day, they have equal distance, and of course, we're going to have 90-degree bond angles in all of these. Okay. So all the bond angles there is 90 degrees because of the presence of the lone pairs of electron. All right. So the repulsive interaction here presented by the lone pair above also cancels out the repulsive interaction presented by the lone pairs below. At the end of the day, we're going to have equal bond angles of 90 degrees there. So to test for our understanding of this topic, we have two questions here, what we know as the evaluation questions. The first one says, find the species with a maximum bond angle. So if you follow through, this is something that will help us to check for your understanding. All right, you recall that when you were talking about the ammonium ion, okay, you are going to have this structure of ammonium ion, and this is exactly a tetrahedral molecular ion. So you have 109.5 degrees because it's a tetrahedral. All right, tetrahedral in shape. So that is for A. Then for B, you have what? Sulfur dichloride. And sulfur dichloride, of course, we have what we call the bend shape because of the presence of two lone pairs of electrons. And ultimately, the angle here is 103 degrees. This is beautiful. Then again, you have the third one. The third one is ammonia. Ammonia will always have a lone pair of electrons on the nitrogen. Okay, recall we did all of this, so this is just to help us. So you see, ammonia has one lone pair of electron, and ammonia, because of that repulsive interaction, we're going to have a bond angle that is a little bit less than 109.5 degrees. As a matter of fact, ammonia has 107 degree bond angles in those bonds. Okay, then lastly, we're going to have phosphorus trichloride. Okay, phosphorus trichloride. All right, so if this is what we have, we know that chlorine will always want to have 8 electrons around the central atom. Okay, we're going to have 8 electrons around the central atom. So this is what we have. We have this, and then we have the lone pair of electrons. All right, so at the end of the day, we have a T-shaped molecule, or I could have written it this way. It's the same thing, but just for clarity purpose, permit me to place, okay, the lone pair of electrons here. This is this, this is this, and this is this. So we have a T-shaped molecule, which is ultimately about 100 degrees in the bond angle. Okay, after the repulsive interaction, we have about 100 degrees bond angle. Beautiful. All right, so say find the species with a maximum bond angle. So if this is what you have, what will be the maximum bond angle? clearly you can see that the maximum bond angle here is 109.5 degrees, as you see in the ammonium ion. Okay, nice. So if that is said, then again you have here, you have methane. Methane is this. Okay, methane is a tetrahedral molecule. This is methane. When you look at the VSEPR theory, this is methane. Alright, so of course again you have 109.5 degrees, and of course I can see a low pair of electron there. So here you have water molecule. This is what you have, two low pairs of electron. This is 104.5 degrees, if you recall. So we have two low pairs of electron. Here you have phosphorus pentachloride. Ammonia is already given to us, so no need repeating it. So for the D, we have, for the C, we have phosphorus pentachloride, which is drawn like this. Phosphorus centrally placed. You have this, you have chlorine, you have chlorine. Of course, you have chlorine in the equatorial position. Of course, you have chlorine. Alright, so this is a typical example of what we call trigonal bipyramidal molecule, okay, or electron geometry. So again, let me tidy it up. So we have this here, we have the chlorine atom here, beautiful. Alright, again, we are gonna have the axial position. Here you have your 90 degrees. Because here is the 90 degrees. If you join these two,